All right, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, and that must mean it's time for another Food for Thought Friday. Happiness. It's good for productivity, right? Happy workers are productive workers. We've all heard that before. And perhaps we've even said this ourselves. I know I certainly have. And anecdotally, I can even report that I've seen it. I've lived it. I know I'm certainly more productive when I'm in a good mood than when I'm in a bad mood. Or am I? And what exactly is the relationship between happiness and productivity? Are happy people more productive? Or is it the case that being more productive makes a person more happy? Now, in terms of correlational research terminology, this is a question of directionality, and that happens to be a very important question. Now, because if happiness leads to greater productivity, then it makes sense to invest in organizational resources into increased happiness to see that return on investment in terms of greater productivity and profitability. However, if it's the case that increased productivity leads to increased happiness, right, the other way around, then increasing resources and investing resources to increase happiness won't necessarily yield a return on investment, at least not in terms of greater profitability resulting from increased productivity. So again, does happiness lead to productivity, or does productivity lead to happiness? And you might think, well, who the heck cares? Well, it matters what the inputs and the outputs are, because it matters what you're investing organizational time and resources, money, into. Otherwise, you're just throwing money at something that may or may not yield a return on investment. And if you're going to do that haphazardly, then you're being incredibly irresponsibly from a fiscal standpoint. So that's why it matters. Now, if you don't know, I have a passion for bridging the gap between behavioral science and everyday organizational practical application. And if you're new here, I want you to go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for more content like this. And let me know down in the comments below. Are you more productive when you're in a better mood, or are you less productive when you're in a better mood? Okay. Now, today, I'm pulling from an article called Happy Productive Teams and Work Units, a systematic review of happy productive worker thesis. And as always, I'm going to give you a screenshot here of the first page of the article somewhere here on the screen, and I will link the article below. This research paper was published in the 2019 edition of the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. So let's dig into the research and see what we find. Now, beginning with a few definitions. In an earlier video last week, I outlined the conceptualization of happiness, and I said, hey, there are two conceptualizations. There's one, a eudaimonic framework, looking at life, looking at a life assessment over the entire individual's lifespan, and we looked at Aristotle's thoughts on eudaimonia. And there's the second framework, which is the hedonic framework, which is a situational type of happiness. And this article has conceptualized happiness as general well-being. Now, to quote the authors, quote, "Scholars have treated happiness as well-being and have studied it through different constructs that overlap with the broad concept of happiness. Example, psychological well-being, subjective well-being, and satisfaction with life. There are two main perspectives about happiness or well-being, hedonic and eudaimonic. The hedonic approach focuses on happiness and defines well-being in terms of pleasure attainment and pain avoidance. And the eudaimonic approach focuses on the meaning and self-realization and defines well-being in terms of the degree to which a person is fully functioning. Okay? Carrying on, the authors say, following Sonnentag, that's another researcher, well-being refers to a person's hedonic experience of feeling good and to the eudaimonic experience of fulfillment of purpose. Okay, end quote. Okay, so this is a literature review article that I'm reading from, and the articles summarize the current and previous research to date on happiness. So carrying on, opening quote. So far, research on the happy, productive worker thesis has focused mainly on the hedonic constructs, i.e., job satisfaction, affect, which is emotion. However, the last decades have seen a growth in research on individual level eudaimonic constructs such as engagement and flow and thriving at work and flourishing at work and meaning at work and purpose in life or personal growth. End quote. All right, so I'm not gonna, you don't have to understand much of that, nor do you have to remember it. I just want to give that to you sort of as a framework. But essentially, the authors are saying, look, so far, and this was in 2019, so far, the research on the happy, productive worker thesis has focused on factors such as engagement and flow and thriving at work and flourishing at work and meaning at work and purpose in life and personal growth. And so far, the research has lumped all of those factors into a bucket called happiness. Okay, that's what the authors are saying here. Okay, so to carry on, opening quote. In her review about happiness at work, Fisher, who, by the way, we reviewed last week. Okay, we reviewed that article last week. If you haven't seen that video or that article, go back to last week's post. Go back to the previous YouTube video. Watch that video. Pull up the article. Find out what's going on with Fisher's research. Okay, but in her review about happiness at work, Fisher identified some research on collective job satisfaction, group task satisfaction, group affective tone, group mood, unit level engagement. And the authors say in this article, we present the hedonic and eudaimonic perspectives of on individual and collective well-being at work identified by Fisher in Table 1. And so, for the sake of nerding out a little bit, I'll throw Table 1 somewhere here on the screen, and you can take a look at it if you want. Carrying on, the authors say, quote, in our review of happy productive work units, we aim to broaden the scope of research on collective well-being and beyond a hedonic perspective by also exploring whether research on eudaimonic constructs has taken place at the workplace unit level. This is a review article. They're reviewing all the current and previous research to date on workplace happiness and its impact on worker productivity. All right, so all of that preamble, and the authors then get around to their definition, and they say, quote, collective happiness or well-being refers to an emotional or affective climate that emerges in work units and becomes a work context for employees affecting their work experience, behaviors, and performance. End quote. Okay, so there we go. Finally, we're addressing an emotional climate that emerges in teams and affects employee experiences, behaviors, and performance. Great, so we finally got there. So the question then remains, are happy workers more productive? Okay, well, perhaps not surprisingly, it's still not straightforward. We need to first determine what exactly are we talking about when we say performance. Now, to read again from the authors, opening quote, the approach taken to define the measure of performance differs depending on the level at which the performance is assessed. Are we looking at individual performance? Are we looking at team or work unit performance? Are we looking at organizational performance? At the team level, it's important to make a conceptual distinction between team performance and team effectiveness. End quote. And I need to stop right there because that statement by the authors is huge. It's absolutely huge. And I'm going to read it again. It says, it's important to make a conceptual distinction between team performance and team effectiveness. End quote. I want you to get this. This means that a work team can have a high degree of effectiveness insofar as they reach the team or organizational objectives. They can have a high degree of effectiveness. However, they can do so while not having a high degree of team performance, right? Team effectiveness, team performance, they're not the same thing, right? In other words, the team cannibalizes itself. The team is not cohesive. Every member is out for themselves. It's a complete cutthroat and toxic environment. However, organizational objectives are met. Right? So, as far as the objective measurables, the organization looks on and says, yeah, this is an effective team, right? But it's not one that performs as a team. It meets the objective, but it doesn't perform as a team. It cannibalizes the team. It achieves the objectives at the expense of the team. Okay, so that's worth noting. That's worth taking note of. Okay, that's worth taking note of. Okay, so let's carry on. Following, opening quote, following Salas et al., that's a fancy word to mean Salas and their colleagues, team performance accounts for the outcomes of the team's actions regardless of how the team may have accomplished the task. In other words, they can completely destroy team morale as long as they accomplish the task. Conversely, team effectiveness takes a more holistic perspective in considering not only whether the team performed, example, completed the team task, but also how the team interacted, i.e., the team process and teamwork, to achieve the team outcome. And this is an important differentiation because many factors external to the team may contribute to the success or the failure of the team. And therefore, in some cases, team performance measures may be deficient in understanding the team. Closing quote. All right, so getting to those definitions and getting those definitions out of the way, what did the authors find regarding the relationship between happiness and productivity? That's still the question that we're seeking to answer. So opening quote, back to the article. The predominant view in performance research and across 30 high-performance work unit studies identified in our review is that collective well-being is an antecedent of collective performance. There we go. Collective well-being is an antecedent to collective performance. The happy, productive relationship, right? Happy, productive, that's the relationship between happiness and productivity. The happy, productive relationship obtains generalized empirical support as a positive and significant relationship, both in terms of meta-analysis and our findings, say the authors. Previous meta-analysis have provided moderate corrected correlations between work unit satisfaction and performance, group affect and group task performance, and business unit engagement and performance. End quote. What the authors are saying is this, in layman's terms. Yes, we see a positive relationship between happiness and productivity. Yes, previous research has found a relationship between work unit satisfaction and performance. Previous research has found a positive relationship between group affect, right? That's emotional state, and group task performance. Previous research has found a positive relationship between business unit engagement and performance. Okay, let's go back to the article. Opening quote, in our systematic review, we, the authors, found 76.2% of the correlations reported were positive and significant across different constructs of collective well-being and performance. Existing evidence so far shows a moderate relationship does not allow concluding causal direction and is affected by mediating and moderating third variables. That's a mouthful. It's super technical. I know. I'm going to try and unpackage this for us. But this is huge, and I'm going to unpackage this, but you need to know that this is absolutely huge, because all of that, what they've just said, means based on the current research on happiness and productivity, there's insufficient evidence to conclude a causal relationship. Okay? So, does happiness cause higher productivity? We don't know. All of the available evidence and research, we don't know. Okay? That's what they have found. We don't know. And then the aspect of directionality. Is it happiness that causes productivity? Or is it more productivity that causes people to be happier? Again, according to the author, the findings are inconclusive. Goodness! You gotta get this. The authors state that, quote, existing evidence so far shows that any known relationship between happiness and productivity is affected by a mediating and moderating third variable. Okay? This is huge. This means, and this was in 2019, this means that the relationship, it's not linear. Happiness may lead to increased productivity, but perhaps only so far as it increases some third variable, such as, I don't know, self-efficacy, belief in one's own abilities. Maybe. Okay, I'll try to break that down a little bit more. Happiness leads to increased productivity, but only through the path of the fact that it maybe increases a third variable, such as self-efficacy, belief in oneself. So does making people more happy increase productivity? No, not necessarily. There's not necessarily a direct relationship, a direct causal relationship. What the research is finding is it might be the case that increasing happiness leads to an increase of self-efficacy, as an example. What is that? It leads to people's belief in themselves. So if you cause somebody to be happier, it leads them to have higher levels of belief in themselves, and it is that belief in themselves that's actually driving the increase in productivity. Okay? And why is that important? I mean, you might look at this going like, man, who cares? Make people happy. Why is it important? Because if we invest time and financial resource into increasing employee happiness, right? Maybe by making the workplace more fun, foosball tables, happy communications, happy messages. We want everyone to have fun. We want everyone to be happy. If we invest time and financial resources into increasing employee happiness, but we fail to invest in initiatives that increase self-efficacy, such as, for an example, additional increased training, then we fail to see the relationship between happiness and productivity. Are you getting this? Are you getting this? We fail to see the relationship take place between happiness and productivity. Why? Because the relationship between happiness and productivity, right, is mediated and moderated by a third variable, such as, for example, employee self-efficacy. efficacy. So where do we need to spend time and money? Not on increasing happiness. No, rather, let's go directly to the impacting variable, increasing employee self-efficacy. Man, I hope you're getting this. So here's the takeaway. Is employee happiness good unto itself? Of course it is. Of course it is. There's nothing negative about having people be happy. But is it necessarily going to lead to increased productivity and financial profitability? No, not necessarily. There are mediating and moderating factors that we need to address. And I'm going to be digging more into those in the coming weeks. So do stay tuned. Okay. Now, I hope that helps. Follow me for more.